Summer's calling, and Shackshop.us has you covered. Dive into hot sales on lady swimsuits, sleek, stylish, and perfect for pool or beach. Stay connected and on trend with smartwatches that track your every move. Explore the depths with underwater drones and reach new heights with our flying drones. Adventure starts here. Hurry, these deals won't last. Shop now at shackshop.us and make this season unforgettable. Shackshop.us, where adventure meets style.
CNN found itself at the center of a major online backlash Tuesday after the network deleted a social media post describing two Pennsylvania men charged with throwing explosive devices at a protest near the New York City mayor's residence. The controversy erupted after the network published a post on X, formerly Twitter, that many critics argued framed the alleged attackers in a sympathetic way, while failing to emphasize the seriousness of the charges they face. The now-deleted message described the suspects as two Pennsylvania teenagers who had traveled to New York City on what could have been a normal day enjoying the city during unusually warm weather. The post then stated that in less than an hour, their lives would drastically change after they were arrested for throwing homemade bombs into a crowd gathered outside the residence of New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani. Critics quickly seized on the tone of the message, arguing that it appeared to focus more on the suspect's personal circumstances than the alleged attack itself. Within hours, screenshots of the post began circulating widely across social media platforms, prompting accusations that the network had minimized what federal prosecutors say was an attempted terrorist attack. The incident outside Gracie Mansion. The charges stem from an incident that occurred Saturday near Gracie Mansion, the official residence of New York City's mayor. According to federal prosecutors, two suspects traveled from Bucks County, Pennsylvania into Manhattan early that morning. Authorities say that shortly after arriving in the city, the pair allegedly detonated and threw improvised explosive devices into a crowd gathered outside the residence of New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani. The demonstration had been organized as an anti-Muslim protest outside the mayor's home. Law enforcement officials said the devices were ignited and thrown toward protesters in what investigators believe could have caused significant harm if they had fully detonated or landed differently in the crowd. Video released in court filings purportedly shows one suspect fleeing the scene after throwing an explosive device. The footage, according to prosecutors, became key evidence supporting the criminal charges that followed. Who the suspects are. Authorities identified the suspects as Emir Balat, 18, from Langhorne, Pennsylvania; Ibrahim Kayumi, 19, from Newtown, Pennsylvania. Both communities are located in Bucks County, just outside Philadelphia. Investigators say the pair traveled roughly 90 miles to New York City prior to the incident. Federal prosecutors allege the suspects were influenced by extremist ideology and were inspired by propaganda associated with ISIS, the terrorist organization also known as the Islamic State. Officials say the investigation uncovered evidence suggesting the suspects had consumed and shared extremist materials online prior to the alleged attack. Federal charges filed. The Justice Department moved quickly to bring federal charges following the incident. Prosecutors accused the two suspects of providing material support to a designated foreign terrorist organization, using a weapon of mass destruction, carrying out an act intended to intimidate civilians. Under U.S. law, improvised explosive devices used in attacks against civilian populations can qualify as weapons of mass destruction, even when they are relatively small. If convicted, the charges could carry extremely severe penalties, potentially including decades in federal prison. Federal officials also executed search warrants in multiple locations connected to the suspects in both Pennsylvania and New Jersey as part of the ongoing investigation. CNN deletes the post. As criticism of the network's social media framing intensified, CNN removed the original post from its account. Shortly afterward, the network issued a statement acknowledging the problem with the wording. In a follow-up message on X, CNN said the original post did not adequately reflect the seriousness of the incident and therefore violated its internal editorial standards. The statement read, "A post regarding the two individuals arrested for throwing homemade bombs outside of New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani's home failed to reflect the gravity of the incident, thereby breaching the editorial standards we require for all our reporting. It has therefore been deleted." The network did not provide additional details about how the post had been written or approved before being published. Media figures criticized the framing. Even some voices within CNN's own orbit criticized the wording of the deleted message. CNN media analyst Brian Stelter addressed the controversy in his newsletter, describing the tweet as problematic despite the underlying reporting being sound. Stelter wrote that while the article covering the incident itself contained solid journalism, the promotional social media post used to share the story online crossed a line. The story itself was solid, he wrote, but the tweet was outrageous and quickly addressed by CNN management. He added that the criticism directed at the network over the tweet was justified. Social media reaction explodes. The deleted post quickly became a flashpoint in ongoing debates about media bias and how news organizations frame politically sensitive stories. Commentators from across the political spectrum weighed in, though many of the sharpest criticisms came from conservative writers and public figures.
Several critics argued that the message appeared to humanize the suspects while failing to describe the alleged attack as terrorism. Others said the tone read more like a narrative introduction to a feature story than a straightforward report about a violent criminal act. Columnist Tim Carney described the wording as extremely strange, arguing that major news outlets often struggle with how to frame stories involving extremist violence. Critics accuse media of softening language. One of the most common complaints about the post was that it avoided using terms such as terrorist or terror attack. Media watchdog group Honest Reporting said the framing suggested sympathy for the suspects rather than concern for potential victims. In a widely shared post, the organization mocked the wording as portraying the suspects as unfortunate young men whose lives had suddenly taken a wrong turn. The group argued that the suspects were facing serious charges tied to extremist ideology, and the language used by the network obscured that reality. Journalists joined the criticism. Some journalists also questioned the storytelling approach used in the post. Daniel Sugarman, deputy editor of Jewish News in the United Kingdom, argued that the narrative framing would have been questionable even immediately after the attack. However, he said it was particularly problematic given what investigators have since alleged about the suspects' motivations. Sugarman wrote that once the alleged ideological motivations became clear, continuing to frame the story around the suspect's disrupted day was deeply inappropriate.
The unusual tone of the deleted post prompted widespread satire online. One journalist, Scott Bertram, rewrote the message using the same narrative style but applied it to the September 11th terrorist attacks. His mock version described the 19 hijackers as men who arrived at East Coast airports for what could have been a routine flight before their lives drastically changed. The satirical rewrite spread rapidly online as critics used it to illustrate how strange they believed CNN's wording had been. Lawmakers weigh in. Members of Congress also joined the discussion. Representative Eli Crane of Arizona criticized the network in a blunt post on X. Crane argued that the suspects should be described clearly as terrorists, given the charges they face. His comments reflected broader frustration among some lawmakers who believe mainstream media outlets sometimes avoid using the word terrorism in politically sensitive cases. Commentary from media observers. Other media observers argued that the controversy reflected a larger trend in how news organizations attempt to craft narrative-driven social media posts. Ford Fisher, editor-in-chief of News to Share, questioned whether the framing made logical sense. He noted that almost anyone who commits a crime could technically have been enjoying a normal day before doing something illegal. In his view, that kind of storytelling device did little to add meaningful context to the story. Critics accuse CNN of narrative storytelling. Some conservative commentators suggested the wording represented an attempt to soften the image of the suspects. Red State writer Bonchi argued that the post portrayed the men as misguided young people rather than individuals accused of carrying out an ideologically motivated attack. He claimed the framing illustrated what he sees as a broader tendency in some media outlets to emphasize personal narratives when reporting on extremist crimes. Satirical responses fled social media. Beyond political commentators and journalists, the controversy also generated a wave of sarcasm from social media users. Barstool sports personality Jack Mack posted a parody message mocking the tone of the original tweet. His version sarcastically suggested that the suspects had simply had their day ruined by accidentally throwing bombs into a crowd. The post was widely shared as critics continued to highlight what they saw as the absurdity of the original wording. The role of social media in modern journalism. The incident also renewed debate about the role of social media posts in modern journalism. News organizations frequently promote their reporting through short posts designed to attract readers. These posts often rely on storytelling hooks or dramatic introductions to capture attention in crowded social media feeds. However, critics say that approach can sometimes backfire when the tone of the promotional post clashes with the seriousness of the underlying news story. Editorial standards and corrections. CNN's decision to delete the post and acknowledge that it violated internal editorial standards reflects the challenges newsrooms face when publishing content quickly online. Large media organizations typically have layers of editorial review for major articles. But social media posts are often written and published much faster, sometimes by digital teams operating under tight deadlines. Mistakes in wording or tone can therefore spread widely before they are corrected. Ongoing investigation. Meanwhile, the criminal case against the two suspects continues to unfold. Federal authorities are still reviewing digital evidence, travel records, and communications connected to the alleged attack. Search warrants executed in Pennsylvania and New Jersey are expected to provide investigators with additional information about the suspects' planning and potential connections. Officials have not ruled out the possibility that other individuals could have been involved. Security concerns in New York City. The incident has also raised concerns about security around political demonstrations in New York City. Gracie Mansion and the surrounding Upper East Side neighborhood frequently host protests because of the symbolic significance of the mayor's residence. Law enforcement officials say they continually review security measures in response to threats. The alleged bombing attempt has prompted renewed attention to those protocols. The broader debate over media language. Ultimately, the controversy surrounding CNN's deleted post highlights an ongoing debate about how news organizations describe violent incidents and those accused of carrying them out. Some critics argue that media outlets should use stronger language when suspects are accused of extremist violence. Others caution that journalists must be careful not to assign labels like terrorist before suspects are convicted in court.
Balancing accuracy, fairness, and clarity remains one of the most challenging aspects of reporting on politically charged events. Conclusion. The backlash over CNN's deleted social media post demonstrates how quickly public scrutiny can shape the conversation around news coverage. Within hours, a single tweet became the focus of a national debate about journalistic framing, media bias, and the language used to describe violent crimes. While the network acknowledged that the wording failed to reflect the seriousness of the alleged attack, the incident serves as a reminder that even small editorial choices can have significant consequences in the fast-moving world of digital news. As the legal case against the suspects proceeds, the controversy surrounding the post will likely remain part of the broader discussion about media responsibility and the challenges of reporting in the social media era.